Robo-calls in the last federal election. For their thoughts on a controversy that does not look like it's going to go away anytime soon, we have with us today the news panel. John Ibbotson from the Globe and Mail, he's in Ottawa. Martin Regg-Con is at the Toronto Star joining us in Toronto. Martin, we'll start with you. What's your take on all this, the robo-calls scandal?
Well, what I haven't really heard from where I sit from the Prime Minister is a truly passionate denunciation of what we have seen and heard in the last few days. He's so busy denying any involvement at the top, and he may be right that the people at the very top were not involved in this, but I haven't heard him empathize with what Canadians, ordinary Canadians, are feeling about this, which is a real sense of disgust that people would tamper with something that we consider sacrosanct, our democratic process. The reason I'm skeptical that this is really involving the very top of the Conservative Party is that we're seeing it sprinkling across various jurisdictions and ridings. Not everywhere, not in a coordinated conspiratorial way. But we've also had a taste of this in Ontario. Not people trying to relocate election polling booths, but what we have seen in recent years, in the last provincial election and even a year or two before that when we had a war about generic drug pricing, is people using robocalls to mislead, to misdirect, and even the NDP used it in Quebec against their MP who defected to the Liberals when they called people and said, if you want to express dissatisfaction, press 1, and they harassed the constituency office of this MP by redirecting callers unknowingly, or people who receive these calls unknowingly, to harass and overwhelm these constituency offices. I think all political parties have to ask themselves if they are misusing robocalls.
John, the Prime Minister is using deny and counterpunch tactics on this. Why won't he be a little more proactive?
Well, I believe he has two choices here. One is he goes in and he says, clearly something bad has happened. We're not responsible, but we want to get to the bottom of this. I'm finding a retired judge and hauling him out of retirement to take a look at it. But he knows that the Gomery inquiry probably destroyed the Liberal Party over the sponsorship scandal. He appears convinced that nothing within the apparatus of the party itself was involved. So that has to mean nothing that was going on at campaign headquarters during the election campaign, and none of the senior officials in the ridings themselves were actively doing anything. He's staking that, sort of nailing it to the wall and saying, that's our position. And I think he's gambling that he can just ride it out, that he doesn't need to go any further, doesn't need to call an inquiry, that the opposition simply isn't going to be able to find anything that can be tied directly to the apparatus of the Conservative Party itself.
But, John, is he not sticking his neck out a very long way to make this categorical denial? What if, over time, we find out tentacles went here, there, and everywhere?
Well, then he's in a lot of trouble. And here is where the contradiction is. Mr. Harper must be very confident that there is going to be no evidence linking the party to these operations. And yet these operations took place. Somebody did it. And if it's just some enthusiastic university student, well, where did he get his hands on the databases that allowed him to make these calls? Where did he get the money to hire companies to place these robocalls? So you have two contradictions here. Something went on, something that involved money and something that involved organization on the one side, and an absolute categorical denial on the part of the Prime Minister that his party had anything to do with it on the other. It's a puzzlement.
Martin, you mentioned that this is one of the things Canadians find sacrosanct in the democratic process. Do you think there's some kind of disconnect here between Main Street and the folks in power in Ottawa?
I have to think so because I personally take the process very seriously. I worked overseas for a few years and I've seen people lay their lives on the line for the right to vote. And so when someone tampers with that, even in a tangential way, I just find that truly disgusting. And I think this is a story people can understand, especially people who get out and vote, find this, who wait in line, who go to the polling station. Anyone who has heard some of those sample phone calls, the Star had on its website a tape recording of the initial one of those calls, which purported to be from Elections Canada in both official languages, and it sounded very official and very carefully plotted out. That, I just think Mr. Harper has to grasp what people are feeling in their gut. And it's not enough for him to talk to the very top of his party to try to get the all clear. He has to use all the power that he has as Prime Minister, but also as party leader, to say, find out who did it, find out how this happened, before the police do, and if we find anything, let's hand it over to the police. Bob Rae and the Liberals found out what happened, and they acted quickly on this. I haven't seen the Conservative Party act as forcefully as others would expect them to.
Switching gears here, John.